Okay, this is Chullin Daf Yud Beis, 12a. We begin four lines from the top. The Gemara is coming back to the topic of the Mishnah after having gone off on a couple of tangents. Amar Nachman Amar Rav, Ro'eh Echad Sheshachat, you see somebody else doing shchita. Imro mitchila v'ya, so if you see the whole act of shchita from beginning to end, mutar lachol b'shchita, so then you can eat it. In other words, if you're observing and you see that it's done correctly, it's fine. Love, but if not, if you're not observing, Asur lechol mishlita, so you can't eat it. Hechinami. So Gemara says, wait a minute, what are we talking about? If we know that the shochet knows what he's doing, lamali ra, what do you have to watch him for? If you know that he's not a qualified shochet, pshita. Obviously, you can't eat from that shchita because you must be concerned that he didn't do it right. So maybe it's that you don't know, right? You don't know this guy who's doing the shchita, right? I mean, maybe a good shochet, maybe not. So maybe that's what it is. So in such a case, so Rav says that you can't assume that he's a good shochet. You have to be watching it. So Gemara says, no, wait a minute. There's a rove here that most people who do shchita know what they're doing. Milo Tanya, as we have in the Brisa. You're in the marketplace and you found a slaughtered chicken. Or you told an agent, you said, go and slaughter my chicken. And then he found that it was indeed slaughtered, but he doesn't know if it was the shaliach or not. So we can assume it was shechted properly in both these cases. Alma, so the only possible explanation, you have no idea who did this shchita, right? Sure, you told an agent, but you don't know if he's the one who did it. And certainly the one in the marketplace, you found that looked like it was shechted, but you don't know who did it. So you must say that if somebody did shchita, he probably knows what he's doing. So here too, you should say, here you should say the same thing. So if you're watching this guy do shchita, you don't know if he's a qualified shochet, but he is doing shchita, so you have to assume that you should assume, we should say that you assume that he knows what he's doing, that the shchita is good. So the more answer is, okay, Leolam Diyada Logomer. All right, we're talking about a place where you know that this guy is not a qualified shochet. Uchagon the shachat kaman chad siman shapir. So why would you think that it might be kosher? Like if you know that he doesn't know what he's doing, so it should be obvious. What does Rav have to tell us? That it's not a good that you have to be supervising. So the answer is, the case is where you saw him doing the first part of the shechita, but not the complete shechita, right? So you saw that as he began and he went through one of the simanim, either the windpipe or the esophagus. Um, you saw one, but you didn't get to see the end of the action, right? So Mao the same midahai shapir, hachnami shapir. So you didn't see it from beginning to end, but you saw the beginning, and you saw that he did the beginning right. So maybe you should assume that since he did the beginning right, he must be qualified. So Rav tells us, "Hi Isramuye Isramile." Now, it might be that he doesn't know what he's doing. He happened to do it right at the beginning, but that doesn't tell you that he did it right at the end. Idach, maybe when he did the second half of the shechita, Shema Daras, maybe one of the details was wrong. Maybe there was a delay, which invalidates the shechita. Maybe he used pressure rather than the sharpness of the knife, which invalidates the shechita. So that's why, if it's a person who's not doing shechita, even if you have reason to believe that he knows what he's doing by observing part of the shechita, that doesn't mean, says Rav, that you can rely on him. You still have to observe the end in order to make it to know that it's kosher. Rav Dima, Rav Yosef, Rav Nachman. Rav Dima asked, you tell an agent, go and do shechita for my animal. And then the agent goes, oh no, sorry, the owner, the sender goes and he finds, yeah, the shechita was done. Mahu, but he doesn't know who did the shechita. Mahu. What do we say? Does he assume that the shechita is kosher or not? So if he knew the agent did it, presumably he appointed an agent who knew how to do shechita, so that would be all right. But he doesn't know for sure if it was the agent who did the shechita or maybe somebody else did it. Amalo, if Nachman answers, we have a chazaka to make a chazaka that it was properly done. What about a different case? You tell somebody to go and take truma from my produce. And then you went and you saw that, yes, some of the produce had been put aside and it's marked truma, but you don't know who did it. Amarlo ein chaskasa tarum. Rabbi Nachman says, no, here the case is different. There's no chazaka. We don't know that the truma was done properly. Manasha. So Gemara says, well, like, to have you can't have it both ways. So if you're going to say that the principle is that the agent is going to do what you told him to do, afilu truma nami. So why do you invalidate the truma? And if you're not going to assume that the shaliach did his work, then afilu shchita namilo. So then why do you validate the shchita? When you measure out for me a core of salt, which is some kind of idiom. Like it's unclear what we're getting at, what he's getting at here. It's like, I'm going to answer your question. Don't worry, I'm going to answer your question. Not clear what the salt thing is, but some kind of idiom. So the answer is that we don't assume that the shaliach was the one who did it. Ushchita, but why do we say the shchita is valid? Maybe it could be because, look, you've got all your workers there, and you say to one guy in the presence of all of them, go do the shchita, and then everybody hears, and one of the other people happens upon the animal and he says, "Oh, this is the animal that was supposed to get shchita. I'll do him a favor. I'll do it myself." So maybe somebody else did it, but so even though he went and did the shchita, not the agent, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't have to be just because somebody else did it. If he did the shchita, then he's part of the rove that people who do shchita are probably experts. So it doesn't matter who did the shchita. So whoever did the shchita can be assumed to be valid. It doesn't have to be the agent that the owner designated as someone he trusts. It's still kosher. But truma, in the case of truma, dilma ina shachrina shama v'yazal taram. Maybe the same thing happened. Somebody else went and did the truma. Avalei taram shlomi das. Then there's a problem of it has to be the owner. The owner has to consent, right? The owner has to intend to give this for truma. Taram shlomi das ain't truma so truma. If you do truma without the knowledge of the owner, then that doesn't count. That doesn't work, and we'll see why. I mean, we won't see why this is a monetary activity. It's a monetary loss, if you will, to the owner. And so if you designate one person to do it, that person can do it. But a random person can't separate your truma. So that's why the difference. Now, this idea that most people who do shchita are qualified, maybe that's machlokas tanaim. Tanya. Somebody lost their goats or chickens, and then you found them and they were slaughtered. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't eat them. Rabbi Chanina says you can eat them. The shechita is good. You can assume it's good. Amar Rabbi, Nirin Divarim Shal Rabbi Yehuda Shemitzan Biashba. It seems like what Rabbi Yehuda was talking about when he said it's asur. It's when you found them in the dump. And Rabbi Chanina is talking about when you found them at home. So in other words, it seems reasonable that if you found them in the dump, then don't assume it was a good shechita. And if you found them in your backyard, then assume it was a good shechita. So in other words, I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. If you found it in the dump, I found paskin like Rabbi Chanina that it's okay if you found it in your backyard. My love, okay. So now, what is the machlokas between them? Damar Savar, Amrina Rav Mitzine Esel Shita Mumchine. One would hold, Rabbi Chanina would say that you saw there was shchita took place here. We assume that the guy who did the shchita knew what he was doing because most people who do shchita know what they were doing. Therefore, it's kosher. Damar Savar, but Rabbi Yehuda would hold no. Amrina Lo Amrina Rav Mitzine Esel Shita Mumchine. We don't say that. So if you find your meat slaughtered, you don't know who did it, then you can't eat it. Rav No, that's not the way to interpret this argument. Everybody agrees that people who do shchita are experts. If you found it at home, then everybody agrees that it's mutar. And if you find it in the public dump, everybody will agree that it's usher. What's the machlokas? If you find it in your garbage can at home. One says this is a normal place to put to put the animal carcass. Umar Savar it's not a normal place to put kosher meat, the kosher carcass. Now, Amarav, near and Rabbi Yehuda Shematzam Biashba. So we're now turning to Rabbi who said, how do we paskin? So he said we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda that it's usher if you find it in the dump. My ashba, what kind of dump are we talking about? Ilema ashba shubashuk. If we're talking about the public dump, then hamarta kuli amalopli the usher. You would say that everybody agrees that. So obviously we'd paskin like that it's usher because everybody would agree. Elulav pshita biyashva shabbai. So we're talking about the home garbage can. But what about the end of what Rabbi said? V'divu Rabbi Chanina ben Osho Yosef Lili Shematzan Babayis. Rabbi said we paskin like Rabbi Chanina that's mutter if you find them at home. My bias. What do you mean by the home? You live in bias mamish if you mean in your kitchen, right? Then you know. So Amarta Dekuliyama Lo Pliga the Shari. You said everybody would agree if you found it in your kitchen, then it's mutter, then it's kosher. To be we must be talking about the garbage dump. So like if he's saying we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda in your home garbage can, and we paskin like Rabbi Chanina in your home garbage can. It's contradictory. So Kasha Rabbi had a Rabbi. So Rabbi is not. What's he talking about here? Hachikam. This is what he means. Near in Diva Rabbi Yehuda, Lir Rabbi Chanina ben Oshur Yossi Aglili B'Yashav B'Shuk. He's not saying we passing like this one in this case and this one in the other case. He's saying no, that Rabbi Chanina would agree to Rabbi Yehuda if you found it in the public dump, which is indeed what we said. Sha'af Rabbi Chanina ben Oshur Yossi Aglili L'Nechlak B'Ashva Shabbayis, because Rabbi Chanina would not argue about the public dump. He's only arguing about the home garbage can. But in the public dump, then even Rabbi Chanina would agree, and that's what all Rabbi is saying. He's not saying who we pass like. He's saying that Rabbi Chanina's opinion doesn't extend to the public dump. Okay, back to the Mishnah again. The Mishnah said that everybody can do shchita, kol shochtin, except for chershot v'katan. These are the people classically who don't have das, who don't have proper the ability to have the correct intention and know what they're doing, because they might mess up the shchita. Now, Shalmakilkul Lokatani. Umar says it doesn't say because they may have done so if they did shchita. Ela Shamikalkulu, because they may mess up in the future. So we seem to be talking about is the shchita kosher? But then we're saying like why use the future tense? Amarava v'zosemeres ein mosrin lehen chulin l'chatchila. This tells us that don't give them so there was an exception, right? Ela gadol omed al gaman, right? That the Mishnah said that the Chereshot v'katan, their shchita is no good unless you're watching them, right? Unless you're supervising. So by using the future tense, lo shema yakalkalu, it's indicating that it's not ideal to let them do it, even if it's kosher, even if you're doing it in a kosher way. Ultimately, that somebody is supervising, it's still not ideal, and l'chatchila you shouldn't allow the chereshot v'katan to do shchita, even if there is supervision. And now the last thing in the Mishnah, anybody who does shchita and others are watching, shchita and kshera. So supervision makes it kosher. Montana Dlobi and Chavana L'Shchita. Now, Chershot of a katan, there's no doubt that they have no das, right? They can't do proper intention. So by saying that it still works even if someone is watching them, it implies that they do have that um, you don't need kavana because you're saying the shechita of a chershot and a katan is kosher, and um, and you have to admit they have no das, so they can't have kavana. So who says that shechita doesn't require kavana, intention? Amarava, Rabbi Nassan. Rava says it's Rabbi Nassan who says this. Um, the Tani Oshia Zeiram Demin Chavraya. Oshia, the younger from Chavraya, a place called Chavraya, says, Zarek Sakin Lunot Sabakoso. You're throwing a knife at the wall. Um, and as the knife is traveling through the air, it does shchita properly. It's a bit of a improbable case, shall we say, but a theoretical case. Rabbi Nassan Machshir, Rabbi Nassan says it's kosher, but Chachamim Potzim, the rabbis say no. Who telling love? So doesn't that mean that there's no intention? Um, so Rav Nassan seems to be saying if this shita took place in this manner without intention, it seems to be kosher. But the rabbis say no. So it's Rav Nassan is what's behind his ruling that you don't need kavana. Who telling love? Who amar law? Who amar law? And Oshia, Rabbi Oshia, Oshia learned this from he learned it. He received it from his teachers, Tani Lav, V'hu Amar La, and he also stated it himself. Halacha Rav Nassan. That halacha is like Rav Nassan. But the Gemara asks, don't we need molichumevi? That when you do shita, you have to in one kind of motion go back and forth to do the shita properly. So he's talking about a case where that happened in the course of throwing this knife. It maybe bounced back or something, and on the rebound, it did the finish the shita. Which again, very improbable case, but we'll assume that it's all theoretical. And we will stop here for today. David will pick it up tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.